Let's begin our study of Talmud Nishcha today on Daf Samachet. We're approximately 2/3 of the way down, and you'll see a line that starts with the word Hitiru. I have a squiggle on the right above Torah Or. It's below Tosas Dibra Masla Machabed, and the Gemara quotes the Mishnah. So at this point, we're going to review what we saw in the Mishnah. And what happens is that during this very hectic day of the 14th of Nisan in the afternoon, all the karbanos, pesachim are being brought, and there's dam on the ritzpah, on the ground, that's spilled on the ground. And Rabbi Yehuda advocates that we take a kli shares and we gather together and fill it up with the dam that's on the ground of the Azarah. And then we do one zrika on the Mizbe'ach with all the dam that we collected in that kli shares. And the Mishnah says, "V'lo hodulo chachamim." The chachamim denied it. And according to the chachamim, this is not a valid zrika. To collect dam at the end of the day and do a zrika of all this collected dam, that's excluded. What we're going to learn today, Amir Hashem, is the Gemara's analysis of this machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and the Chacham. Anya, we learned in the Brisa, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, there's a mixture of damim that were spilled on the ritzvas Azarah, and he would fill up the damim in this kos, and there was a taroves of the damim, and he would do a zrika from this kos. And why? Why does Rabbi Yehuda insist on doing so? Says the Brisa in the name of Rabbi Yehuda, Shemi Shafech Damo Shel Echad Mehem. We have to assume that amongst the various damim that are on the ritzvas Azarah, there may be dam from a korban Pesach, which was nishpach, and was never placed on the Mizbe'ach. So to salvage that korban, and it could also be that the members of that chabura for that korban Pesach are not even aware of the fact that the dam was nishpach. Again, because as we said before, there was a whole shura, you remember, and they passed on the kos, the Mizbe'ach with the dam in it from one coin to the other. Somewhere along the line, the dam never made it to the Mizbe'ach, and it's on the ground. In order to salvage and qualify to be machshir that one single korban Pesach, which never culminated in a zrika, we're going to be zorek this mixture of damim, and therefore we guarantee that every last korban Pesach is kosher, even in an event that the dam was nishpach. We're going to do a zrika. Nimtza zeh machshiro. This zrika of the collected damim that were collected from the ritzvas Azarah, machshiro. Now, what happens exactly in this case? The language of Rabbi Yehuda, Shem Yishafech Damo Shel Echad Mihem, Ala Ritzpah, V'lo Nitan Mimeno Al Gabi HaMizbeach, Nimtza Kos Zeh, Shemilu V'zarka Al Gabi HaMizbeach, Machshiro, Sharigam Hadam HaNishpach, Ma'urav Bo. If he successfully collects every last drop of dam that's on the ritzvah, he definitely, by definition, will have inside this mixture the dam of the Korban Pesach that was nishbach, that never reached the Mizbe'ach. Now, one question that we have to ask here is that there's a lot of dam on the Ritzpah, and the volume of dam of that one single Korban Pesach that might have messed up, so to speak, and the dam never reached the Mizbe'ach, that volume of dam is batel in the entire mixture. Unless Rabbi Yehuda holds that dam and dam is called min b'mino, and we have a rule, min b'mino afilu b'elef lo batel. But before we get to that, we have to assume that there should be bittul. Amru lo, the Chacham respond to Rabbi Yehuda. V'alo lo niskabel b'kli. How can you salvage a Korban Pesach whose dam went from the Savar HaBehema, in this case of the Pesach, directly down to the Ritzvas Azarah? Dam that was not received in a Klishares is possible. Again, we could talk about Olu Lo Yeredu and the Machlokes Reb Shimon Reb Yehuda, but that's not what we're talking about now. We're not talking about him Olu. The Korban Pesach was brought already, but you want to salvage the dam because it was nishbach. What good? What point is there to do a zrika on dam nishbach? It went from the tzavra behema down to the ground of the ritzvah. It was never received in a klishares. Without kabbalah sadam, the dam is possible. And the Gemara is assuming that the absolute critical requirement in avodas hakarban is that immediately after the shechita, there's a kabbalas hadam b'klishares hayidei kohen. The dam goes from the tzavor habehema into the klishares, and then there's holacha to the mizbeach with zrika. If there's nishbach adam from the tzavor habehema before it was received in a klishares, then the dam is possible. You could collect the dam from the ritzvas Azarah. No, that cannot effectuate a hechsher on the dam. Once the dam goes from the tzavor behema down to the ground of the ritzvas Azarah, it's possible in an irreversible way. Now, all this applies, and this is a Mishnah in Zvachim Adaf Chafei, to a case there where there was never a Kabbalas Hadam. What about the following scenario? The Mishnah says if there was a Kabbalas Hadam and then it was Nishbach after the Kabbalah, then you can collect the dam from the Ritzpah and you can do a Zrika because there already was a Kabbalah. So that when we analyze the objection of the Chachamim to Rabbi Yehuda, and they say, well, halolo niskabel b'kli, what does that mean? It means it went from the Savara Behema directly onto the Ritzvah Azarah. Who told you that? Yeah, there's dam that I'm collecting from the floor of the Mizbe'ach, says Rabbi. How did the Chachamim know that dam was pre-Kabbalah dam? Maybe it was post-Kabbalah dam. And if that dam was nishbach after Kabbalah, then the law requires that you collect that dam and do a zrika. The dam is not possible once it was received in a klishares. So that the gap between Kabbalah and zrika does not require that the dam remain in the klishares all the way up to the moment of zrika. It could be that after the Kabbalah, the dam was sanctified for zrika by the Kabbalah, and now even if the dam falls onto the ritzvah, it's still kosher zrika. So what kind of argument did the Chachamim have against Rabbi Yehuda? Rabbi Yehuda is concerned about the possibility that the dam on the Ritzvah fell after the Kabbalah. Like we said before, there's a Shura and one Kohen was Makabal the dam, passed it over to the other, and somewhere along the way it got spilled. So Rabbi Yehuda wants to salvage that korban Pesach. It seems like he's doing a good thing for the Jews. He's collecting all the damim. Again, where there's no bittul here, that's what we have to know. And without bittul, he's got dam that was nishpach after Kabbalah, and that's the dam that he's going to be zorek, again, together with all the other dam, because he can't identify which is the dam that was nishpach. And he's going to be machshir the korban Pesach. It seems like a great enterprise. And that's exactly what the Gemara is going to ask with two simple words. It took me 15 sentences, but in the Gemara it's 2 words. Mina yadi. How did the Chachamim know that the dam that we're collecting for the Ritzvahs Azarah fell directly from the Savara Behema before Kabbalah? Which birdie told them that? Maybe this is dam after Kabbalah. Therefore, the Gemara has to add 1 word to the brisa, to the formulation of the dissenting view of the Chacham. In our brisa, it says, "Halo lo niskabel bikli." You can't take that literally, but rather, "Elahachi karmalei shema lo niskabel bikli." Now, here we have a machlokus between Rashi and Tosfos. And honestly, I don't understand Rashi. So I'm going to present this sugya according to Tosfos. Rashi says that since we don't know whether this dam was this kabel b'kli before it was nishpach, or was it not, therefore the Rabbanan say, if you don't know, then why are you going through the entire tircha of collecting the dam and pouring it and doing a zrika on the Mizbe'ach? So Tosa says, what kind of objection is that? You don't know. So if you don't know, when in doubt, take the higher route, collect the dam, call it a 50% chance that this dam was nishpach after the Kabbalah, and therefore it's absolutely meaningful and obligatory to do a zrika on that dam, to be machshir that korban Pesach. Why would the Chacham say holo yadi? We don't know whether it was nishpach before the Kabbalah or after the Kabbalah, and therefore drop the whole thing. Why? Let's be machmir, and on the chance, whatever the percentage is, that this dam that's collected in the kos was nishpach li achar zrika, let's do a zrika. It's always good, better safe than sorry. Therefore, Tosfos comes up with a breakthrough shita. And he says that dam shenishpach kodem zrika asur lizarka al gabi mizbe'ach. If there was not a kabbalas dam in a klishares, it's not a question of, take the highway and be machmir, and just in case. What do you mean, just in case? You're stuck between a rock and a hard place. Yeah, maybe it's dam liacher kabbalah, and therefore you're motivated to do the zrika. But maybe it's dam before the kabbalah, and it was nishpach before the kabbalah. You're not allowed to put it on the mizbeach. It's awesome. Just 1 second. She'elas HaGemara, this is just a summary of Tosfos. Shema yesh b'kli shu memale dam pasul shelo niskabel b'kli the asur lizarka Shedam posel asul aloso ala Mizbe'ach. Again, he doesn't touch on the question of im alu. What's the status of the dam if he did the zrika on the Mizbe'ach? But he's not allowed to do the zrika. It's dam posel. Now he quotes the Olas Shlomo. We all know who the Olas Shlomo is, don't we? Well, I have a book here called the Masechet Sfarim. So if we have a chance, remind me, I want to look up who the author of the Olas Shlomo is. But I have a feeling that his name was not Shlomo. I don't know. Well, we'll check it out. That he only used the word Shlomo because he wants to defend Rashi. And he writes that Mikevan she'eno el chashash bi'alma is therefore meikar adin ein lochush klal shema nishbach adam v'lachem rak im takana zu haisa motzi also legamri midei sofek hayu misaknim os v'lo kishe'eno motzio midei sofek Shari Adayin Yesh Lachush, Shema Nishbach Adam Kodem Kabbalah. This is a whole nother pshat in Rashi. And he's saying that if Rabbi Yehuda's purpose, his agenda, is lahotzi midei chash. In other words, we're sort of generating some sort of an imaginary chashash that maybe there's dam there that never made it to the Mizbe'ach, and it needs zrika because there was a Kabbalah and a Klishares, is ein letakein davar shelo yotzi midei sofek legamri. In other words, if you have a real sofek, we'll see what that means. Then we apply the principle of sofek oraisa l'chum. You have to take the highway. But if it's only a chashash bi'alma, there's plenty of reason why there's dam on the ritzvah, and for sure, there's a strong possibility that that dam was before Kabbalah. So you want to be choshesh Rabbi Yehuda for the outside chance that Shema Nishbach Adam li achara Kabbalah is then you can justify such a takana for a chash bi'alma if, as a result of takana, you are motzi midei sofek legam. We are motivated to institute various takanos enactments, but only because, as a result of the sofek, we can institute a takana and remove the sofek. But here, she'eno motziasa midei sofek, that even after he does the zrika, adayin yesh lachush shema nishbach adam kodem kabbalah, is in such a case we don't make a takon. Missing a piece of the puzzle here. Where is this person whose dam is on the floor? You see, I think what the Oleg Shlomo is saying is that we don't really have such a person in front of us, because no one of all the Shishim Ribui times 2 who brought a Korban Pesach suspects that his Korban is invalid because the dam of his Pesach never reached the Mizbe'ach. So now what happens? Let's just go through the mathematics here. Unbeknown to him, the dam was nishpach. So what bothers the Chachamim? Again, Rashi is not operating with Tosus that there's an Isur to place dam posel that was never discovered in the Klisharis onto the Mizbe'ach. That's not Rashi's. Rashi understands that what bothers the Chachamim here is that there's not enough of a push to justify this takana and go through this entire effort of gathering the dam to do a zrika, as Rabbi Yehuda advocates, because at the end of the day, we're still in a suffix situation. Which I think what he means is, again, I'm just adding a piece to the puzzle. I hope I'm not, reading too much into this Ola Shlomo, but all I have is his summary of the Ola Shlomo, is that if that imaginary person were to come forward and, let's say he has nervin, as they call it, the Israelis. So he has reason to suspect that maybe the dam of his carbon never made it to the Mizbe'ach. He's losing sleep at night. So what are we going to tell him? Well, you know what? We collected all the dam from the floor and we did a zrika on the Mizbe'ach. You're covered. You have an insurance policy. The answer is he's not covered. Because if there's reason to suspect that the dam of his carbon never reached the Mizbe'ach, then even if now you collect the dam and do a zrika, that doesn't prove anything, because maybe the dam fell onto the ritzvas Azarah before the Kabbalah. So you're not able to convince anyone who's in that suffix situation that now we've done something for you, a good Samaritan act, and you can rest assured we could secure you and guarantee you that your carbon is kosher. What do you mean? You'll never be able to know whether this dam was nishpach before the Kabbalah or after the Kabbalah. So even after you gather together the dam and you do a zrika, in that situation of a suffix, you still haven't salvaged anything, because maybe if there was a shvichas hadam and it didn't reach the Mizbe'ach, maybe that took place before the Kabbalah.
Basic halacha isn't the basic halacha of mechsal mechsa dioraisa is you go l'kula.
What do you mean l'kula? Usually we say suffix dioraisa l'chumra. I'm not sure where you're taking us.
The suffix dioraisa l'chumra is the rabbanon, but suffix dioraisa before the rabbanon Zetstein, this halacha, was that it was l'kula. So therefore, when it's mechsal mechsa, you have a right to assume that it occurred after Kabbalah.
No, but wait a second. If you're saying suffix doraisa is only Rabbanan, then on a doraisa level, he can assume that his carbon is kosher. So why is Rabbi Yehuda going through this effort? The only reason Rabbi Yehuda is going through this effort is because he's paskening that suffix l'chumra. And we have to go through this entire effort just in case the dam was nishpa. So the Rabbanan counter and they say, what do you mean? You're going to go through this entire effort because you want to solve the suffix, because you're holding that we have to be machmir in a case of suffix. Well, you haven't solved the suffix. The suffix is exactly where it was before you did the zrika. Your zrika has in no way removed the suffix. You're motivated because of the suffix that maybe there was a nishpach down. Yeah, so what? So you're going to do a zrika? We're not going to go through this entire effort and institute an enactment, a takana, unless the takana will cover him on all stadim of the suffix. If it guarantees, right? We have many takanas that you don't know whether it's this or it's that. So I'll give you just a mashal. I don't mean to take this literally. But let's say I have a suffix whether my lulav is kosher or not. So I'll take your lulav. I'm not going to suffice with my lulav because I know that your lulav is kosher. So why should I go home at the end of davening not knowing whether I took the lulav? So I'm going to make a takana that we have one lulav in the entire community that we know for sure is kosher. So everybody will wait online to take that lulav. But we'll make such a takana because at the end of the day, we know that that lulav is kosher, and any netila will guarantee that you were yotze. So then it makes sense to make a takana. And Rabbi Yehuda wants to make a takana lest the dam of this carbon was nishpa. But the zrika is not going to solve your problem. You're still left with the sof. That's the way the Magine Shlomo, the Ola Shlomo, wants to defend Rashi. Again, Tosfos has a whole different approach. Tosfos is saying, yeah, you have a suffix that maybe the dam was nishpach and therefore you're motivated to do the zrika. But what about the possibility that the dam was nishpach before the kabbalah? Then you're not allowed to do the zrika because you're not allowed to take the dam puzzle onto the Mizbe'ach. To just give me a minute to finish the sugya because, I do have a time urgency here. Okay. So now Rabbi Yehuda is in the defensive position. Afanilo amarti ella b'niskabel b'kli. When I say that we collect the dam from the ritzbas Azarah at the end of the day to do a zrika, I'm talking about dam that was nishpach after the kabbalah. What? Inoyada. Who told Rabbi Yehuda that the dam that he's collecting on the ritzvah Azarah was nishpach after the kabbalah? I mean, dam equals dam. There's no petek, on the dam that says, well, I was a nishpach dam after kabbalah. And the Gemara answers that what Rabbi Yehuda is basing himself on is the principle of Kohanim's reason.
Right,
there's no question that there was a Kabbalah, and we have a chazaka that Kohanim was reason. Wait a minute. The Kohanim was reason? What are you talking about? The dam was nishpach. It never reached the Mizbe'ach. What kind of Kohanim's reason are you talking about? You're telling me there was reason to be makabel the dam, but they weren't reason to be zorik the dam. I mean, if that's your definition of a zariz, no thanks, buddy. I'm not going to give a big Zion on your sweatshirt because you were very careful about the Kabbalah Saddam, but you were absolutely careless about the Zrika Saddam. The whole combination of the Avod is the Zrika, and now you dropped the ball, and the Dam was Nishbach. You never culminated the Avodah with Zrika. So the Gemara says, and that's the Gemara's kashi, is Rizim Amai Mishtapech. So the Gemara answers, Agav Zrisusayu di Avdi Mishtapech. He says the following, that sometimes Zrizus is the cause for problems. What do I mean? There's one Kohen who's standing next to the Shochet. He's first on line. He's holding on to the Mizbe'ach, to the Klisharis. He will immediately, with Zrizus, accept the dam in the Kli. But now, we have a whole ways to go until we get to the Mizbe'ach. And there's dam coming from all ends over here, from this carbon pesach of Ruvain and this of Shimon and that Levi. The Kohanim are busy with the Zrizus to pass on the dam. Now the Zrizus is going to have a boomerang effect. And mitoch HaZrizus, the Kohen somehow messed up. We don't know which Kohen. And the dam was the victim because it fell on the floor and never reached the Mizbe'ach. So Rabbi Yehuda says, I can definitely apply the principle of Zrizim to guarantee that this dam was received in a Klishares, and there was a Kabbalah. The dam subsequently, because of the Zrizus that's going on amongst the Kohanim, fell on the floor, never reached the Mizbe'ach. Therefore, the dam that I am going to collect from the floor is going to be that dam that was received in a Klishares, but was never subject to Zrika on the Mizbe'ach, and now I'm going to guarantee this person, if we go with the Ola Shlomo, I'm going to guarantee you that his carbon is kosher. He had a suffix whether the dam reached the Mizbe'ach. I'm going to add 1 plus 1 equals 2. Number one, I know that the dam about which we have a doubt whether it reached the Mizbe'ach certainly was received in a klisharis because Kohanim's rizim. On the other hand, I'm afraid that because of this rezus, Agav's Risayu the Avdi Mishtapich, and now there was such a rush to do the Zrika, and maybe they fell on the way and they tipped over the cost and it fell. I'm going to guarantee a Zrika by collecting the dam. But you know what? Rabbi Yehuda, you're missing a point over here. Because you know what dam is on the Ritzvah's Azarah? It's not just the dam that was this kabel b'klishares and then was nishpach. There's a bunch of dam that's on the floor that spurted out from the savar habehema, and that dam is possible. And the Gemara says, "Miman of shach it's possible." It's either possible because it fell to the Ritzvah before Kabbalah, or what happens is that after the Shechita, there's a Kabbalah on the first dam, and then there's more dam that continues to spurt out from the Tzavar Behema. That's the second dam. And that second dam is Pasul Mizbe'ach. And that's what the Gemara says, Valo dam hatamtis me'urav. There is dam hanefesh, which is the first spurt of dam. And that the Gemara thinks is the dam that when it leaves the body of the lamb, we'll call it, or of the little kid goat, right? That dam is the dam hanefesh. That's the lifeblood that keeps the animal alive, and now it went out. Then there's dam tamsis, which is dam that continues to ooze out of the arteries of the animal after the shechita. And that dam is posel izrika. And this is based on a sugya Masechet krisus. And the Gemara says there that the dam hayotiv shchita, the first dam, is shachar. It's dark in color, and achakach adom, and then the second dam is red. V'shnei adomim yotzim b'shasisa below kiluach lemerchak. That dam, which is interesting, I don't know the physics of it, but that dam comes out very slowly. It oozes out. V'acharka, and after that initial dam, which is dark and then red, then there's something called dam hamikalech, dam that spurts out. And afterwards, the dam starts slowing down, and shuv shoses v'yored b'samach. The dam hamikalech, that spurting of dam, which is in a sense sandwiched between the first dam, which is shoses, and the third dam, which is shoses. In the middle, you have the dam hamikalech. That dam hamikalech is called dam nefesh. And that dam is kosher l'zrika. The dam that shoses is called dam tamtzis. Let's get the terminology. Upasul izrika. Now that's Rabbi Yochanan. Reish Lakish increases, goes a step further. He thinks that even the dam shoses before the dam makalech, that we said that the first blood is black and then comes red blood. That red blood, says Reish Lakish, is also considered dam nefesh, and it's kosher l'zrika. You don't have to wait for dam hamakaleach. And therefore, according to Reish Lakish, dam tamtzis which we said is Posel Lizrika, is only the first dam that comes out that's black, but not the second dam, which is only Shoses, that's red. And the law is that dam tzamtzis of a korban Pesach, the Gemara in Zvachim establishes that we're not makabel that dam. There's no kabbalah on that dam. It's nishbach ala ritzvah. We'll let it go out of. So imagine what happens. After the shechita, at what point does the Kohen hamakabel receive the dam? He waits. Let the first dam go out. According to Rabbi Yochanan, the first dam is the black and then the red. According to Reish Lakish, he'll let the black one go out and then he'll receive the red. According to Rabbi Yochanan, we wait for dam hamakaleach. Dam hamakaleach is the dam hanefesh. Since the first two damim, according to Rabbi Yochanan, shachar and adam, or according to Reish Lakish, the first dam, which is shachar, is dam hatamtzis. It's posel izrika. There was no kabbalah on that dam. So what happened to that dam? Did it evaporate into thin air? It fell onto the floor of the Mizbe'ach. It was not, because the Kohen is enjoined, he's not allowed to receive that dam. It's therefore, what are you going to tell me? You're going to tell me that the Kohanim has reason, and they'll do the proper kabbalah, but what happens to the first dam, or the first two damim that come before the dam kiluach, which is dam nefesh? Those first two damim, according to Rabbi Yochanan, are posel izrika b'toras dam tamtzis. So now, what are you going to tell me? You're going to tell me that when you collect the dam from the ritzvas Azarah, Rabbi Yehuda, according to your takana, you can guarantee that that dam is dam that reached the klishares and then was nishpach. Not so. There's ample dam that never reached the klishares, even though the dafka, because the Kohanim has reason, because they know very well not to collect the dam that oozes out, which is dam tamtzis and posel and mizbeach. They're going to wait until the dam nefesh of kiluach. So the dam that's on the ritzpah, if the Kohanim has reason, is the dam tamtzis. And the Gemara says that the only way we can make sense out of Rabbi Yehuda and our Mishnah is because Rabbi Yehuda l'tamei the Omer dam tzamtzis dam ma'al Yehu, that even dam tzamtzis, as we'll see in the Brisa of Rabbi Yehuda, is kosher l'zrika. So that even though there's an admixture of two damim on the ritzpah, there's a dam that was nishpach after Kabbalah b'kli shares, and there's a dam that was nishpach before Kabbalah b'kli shares, because that dam was dam tamtzis. But Rabbi Yehuda holds that even dam tamtzis is royal in Mizbe'ach. And the Gemara is going to quote a brisa to derive Rabbi Yehuda's conclusion from a drasha. And this is going to be a gigantic machlokas between the Tanakam and Rabbi Yehuda about the status of dam tamtzis in two different areas in halacha. First of all, as far as the Isra Achilas dam is concerned, that generates a chiv kares, and secondly, as far as Rika al Gabi Mizbe'ach, the Sanya, we learned in a brisa, dam tamtzis bi Azarah, but it's not considered dam to generate an Isra kares, and therefore the Tanakama holds if it's not full-fledged dam, it's disqualified for Zrika on the Mizbe'ach. And Rabbi Yehuda Omer the kares. Rabbi Yehuda says that when the Torah says thou shalt not eat dam, ki nefesh kol basar domo benafshahu v'kol ochla v'kares, you're chayav kares even for dam tamtzis, and hence it is kosher lizrika. So when it gets mixed up with the other dam, that was dam hanefesh of kilua, that was already received in a klisharis and then was spilled on the ground, all the dam that you're collecting from the ritzvah Azarah, according to Rabbi Yehuda, is kosher l'zrika. Whether or not it's the dam that was received in the klisharis, which is dam hanefesh, or it was dam that went from the savra behema onto the ground of the Azarah, and it was dam tamtzis, even that dam is chayav b'kares under the pasuk of kol nefesh etc. Ochla v'kares, and it's dam haroi l'mizbe'ach for zrika. The Gemara later on, which Amir Hashem will see on Yom Rishon, is going to differentiate between kares as far as achilas dam, the Yisra achila, and the kapara of dam through zrika al gabi mizbeach. Right now, the Gemara is postulating an absolute analogy between the two, and any dam that's chayv and kares, as far as achilas dam, is ipso facto kosher l'zrika to generate a kapara in karbanos. Let me take this opportunity to thank you for being with me the whole week, and Baruch Hashem, we're making quite a bit of progress. Wish you all a fabulous Shabbos. Again, it's a little bit of a Mitzorah Dika Shabbos, what we call Hezger. But nevertheless, some of you may be going to shuls, some of you are not going to shuls. I'm not going to get into that whole issue. But it should be a meaningful Shabbos for all of us.
Amen.
And Shenishma B'sorot Tovot. We should only hear good news. This kind of reasons reminds me, I went for the injection.
Yeah.
The vaccine. I went to a place called Muchedet in this case it was in Gilo, because we don't have it here in Harnof. And there was so much zrizas going on over there that people were literally kept off cap. I couldn't believe it. Here I am waiting for them to call my name. It took me 40 minutes. I waited because I came on time until they finally called me. And it's like crazy. Everyone's on top of each other. I mean, it was mostly Filipinos because every person who came for the injection had a Filipino except for me. But anyway, it was wild. I had a man on my right, women on my left. Everybody's on top of each other. Where's the social distancing? It was like very paradoxical. So sometimes reasons, people who get very tzahitz, they're very involved in doing something. It leads to toyos, because of these reasons. So it's funny that Kohanim's reason works in two different directions, according to Rabbi Yehuda. On the one hand, it guarantees that this dam Shenishpach was after Kabbalah. On the other hand, we really believe that somewhere along the line, there was a puncture, as we say, a fashla, and the dam ended up on the ground. It never reached the Mizbe'ach, Zrika. So that Zrizus works in two ways. Okay, I'm going to stop here because I'm running to Mincha now. If I don't get Mincha, it messes up my whole program.